He walked into that courtroom thinking it was just another day, papers in hand, quiet confidence in his step. But the moment the judge's eyes landed on him, the laughter began. Not because of what he said, not because of what he did, but because of who he was. Too young, too black, too out of place in a room where power was never meant for him. What the judge didn't know was that this teenager carried a secret that would turn the entire courtroom upside down. The question is, how far can prejudice blind us before truth forces us to see? He was only 17, but already wise beyond his years. To most, he was just another teenager, quiet, studious, the kind of kid who spent late nights with law books instead of video games. His dream was simple yet bold, to fight for those who never got a fair chance, people whose voices were too often ignored. Growing up in a neighborhood where sirens were more common than opportunities, he learned early that the rules weren't written the same for everyone. Teachers overlooked him, neighbors shook their heads at his ambition, and even friends warned him not to dream too big. But he refused to shrink himself. This courtroom wasn't his first time challenging expectations. He had already proved himself in debate tournaments and mock trials, always the youngest in the room, always underestimated until he spoke. Still, nothing compared to the weight of walking into a real courtroom, carrying knowledge that most adults twice his age struggled to master. As he took his seat that morning, the oak-paneled walls and sharp glares were reminders that this was not his turf. The polished shoes tapping against the floor, the clerks whispering, the heavy silence before the judge appeared. It all felt like a stage designed to test him. What no one there realized was that this young man wasn't just observing from the sidelines. He was about to become the center of a story that would expose exactly how deep prejudice can run when power is blind to possibility. The first sign of trouble came before the hearing even started. As the teenager quietly reviewed his notes, a low chuckle echoed from the bench. The judge glanced down at him with a smirk, as if the boy's very presence in that courtroom was some kind of joke. A few others in the gallery followed his lead, whispering behind their hands. To them, a black teenager sitting at the attorney's table didn't belong. It looked like a mistake, or worse, a prank. The young man straightened his papers, refusing to show that his hands trembled. He had faced skepticism before, but this wasn't a classroom or a friendly debate stage. This was a courtroom, where every eye was heavy with judgment, and where even the smallest crack in his composure could confirm every stereotype pressed against him. The judge leaned forward, voice dripping with disbelief as he questioned why a child dared insert himself into such serious proceedings. The words weren't sharp on the surface, but the tone cut deep, meant to make him shrink in his seat. It wasn't only about youth. It was about race. Everyone in the room felt the unspoken message. You don't belong here. Not in this role, not in this space of power. He thought about his neighborhood, about the times he watched neighbors treated like suspects for simply existing. He remembered the sting of being followed in stores, the way teachers assumed he'd fail until he outperformed their expectations. Each flash of memory made his pulse pound harder, but instead of breaking him, it fueled him. Still, the tension didn't ease. The judge's laughter wasn't just casual mockery. It was a signal that authority here believed he was less than. As the proceedings began, every objection he raised was dismissed. Every fact he cited was ignored until someone else repeated it. He could feel the courtroom watching him trip over obstacles deliberately set to humiliate. The silence after each rejection wasn't empty. It was loaded, daring him to give up. And yet, he refused to falter. With each setback, his determination sharpened. Beneath his calm face, a storm of anger and resolve built, ready to unleash. The more the judge mocked, the more the boy prepared, not only to defend himself, but to tear apart the assumptions bearing down on him. By now, the air had grown tense, uncomfortable. The judge smirked, so certain that his mocking had crushed the boy's spirit. But the teenager wasn't breaking. He was calculating. Every insult, every slight, every unjust dismissal, it was all fuel, and soon the courtroom would see exactly what they had overlooked, and when that moment came, the laughter would stop. The courtroom was a theater of silence, every breath waiting for the teenager to collapse under the weight of authority. The judge leaned back in his chair, voice rising as he mocked the audacity of a child pretending to play lawyer. Each word dripped with condescension, each remark meant to broadcast superiority. But instead of shrinking, the young man rose to his feet. The room stilled, as though time itself was unsure of what might happen next. His voice, steady and firm, cut through the air. He began to unravel the case point by point. Legal citations sharpened like blades, arguments crafted with precision that left no room for dismissal. The very laws the judge had believed beyond the boy's grasp were now pouring fluently from his mouth. Every reference, every precedent, every phrase revealed not only mastery, but brilliance born of relentless study and lived experience. At first, the spectators exchanged doubtful glances. Then, slowly, their expressions shifted. Murmurs spread. This was no kid fumbling out of his depth. This was a mind sharper than most adults could hope to match. The courtroom was being flipped right before their eyes, yet the judge resisted. His smile faltered, his mockery replaced with a growing, unmistakable unease. For a fleeting moment, his authority trembled. The imbalance of power was being exposed under the harshest light, not through anger, but through undeniable truth articulated by the very person he dismissed as nothing more than a laughingstock. And then it happened, the final blow. The teenager cited a precedent so precise, so devastating that it silenced the bench. The very law the judge once twisted into a weapon of ridicule was turned against him with elegance and fire. The air collapsed into silence, heavier than any gavel's strike. No one was laughing anymore. The silence that followed was louder than any insult that had come before. The judge, who once mocked him, now sat rigid, unable to dismiss what was undeniable. Brilliance, discipline, and truth standing before him in the form of a young black teenager who had defied every stereotype cast upon him. The case moved forward, but something far greater had been revealed that day: the cost of prejudice, and the courage required to shatter it. For the teenager, victory wasn't only in proving his knowledge or silencing the laughter. It was in showing that dignity doesn't need permission to exist, that brilliance doesn't ask to be validated, that every assumption aimed at tearing him down could be transformed into fuel. Walking out of that courtroom, shoulders squared, he knew this would not be the last time he'd face doubt or ridicule. But he also knew the weight of resilience could turn every insult into a stepping stone. This story isn't just about a boy and a judge. It's about what happens every day in classrooms, workplaces, stores, and streets. Moments where bias hides in plain sight, shaping who is given respect and who is denied it. It's about a system that too often laughs at potential before recognizing its power. And it's about the choice each of us has to perpetuate those judgments or to break them. Because at its core, this isn't only his story. It is ours too. The question is, how many more geniuses, leaders, fighters for justice are being overlooked right now, mocked into silence before they are ever given a chance to rise? And when the truth of their brilliance comes to light, will we be ready to listen?